Hi everyone, Ryan Collier from the SolidWorks Education team, and I want to talk to you today about the 3D Experience Academic Tenant Initial Setup. This is the process that resellers will go through in order to set up customers and do some 3 initial steps that customers will never have to do again, but it'll save them a lot of time if we set it up for them. This is the process that happens after customers purchase the tenant and log in for the first time. The reseller will ask the customer for their email address and password that they use to log in. The reseller will then log in as the customer and complete these initial steps. Once this is done and the initial steps are complete, the reseller will then conduct an initial training for how to add students to the tenant as members, create collaborative spaces and add members to them as authors, add students to the student dashboard as readers for the students to use, and also navigate the teacher dashboard and use other apps like Collaborative Lifecycle, User Groups, 3D Play, and a few others. The 3 primary steps. These only need to be completed once, and honestly, there's no reason why the customer needs to know these steps. Initially, when the first admin is added to the tenant, they don't get all the roles. So we need to add the 3D designer role for the first admin. All the members afterwards will get all the roles as you can select them all in the invite process. Second, we need to load the material library. Now this step has to be completed before we do step 3. If not, then step 3 will not work properly. In this process, we actually create the student dashboard for them, which will save them a lot of time. Finally, step 3 is turn off the common space and collaborative space creation for all new users. Many schools want the ability to see exactly what the students are creating, and if the students create them on their own, the teacher does not have visibility until they take ownership of that collaborative space. To save some time, this is turned off by default for us, and this is why we do this in this process. Additionally, many schools have their own LMS systems. So we delete the Getting Started Swim community. That way, the students don't have a place to go and comment and start asking questions to each other, but rather they use their own LMS system. And if the teacher wants to create a community, they can so in a future time and add and walk the students through how to use it. Now let's dive in and go through this process. Initially, when a customer first uses the tenant, they're going to log into the Getting Started My First dashboard. Now we're going to click on the dashboard list symbol, and we're going to go to Platform Management. But while we're setting it up for the teacher, we want to do some things to make it easier for them. So we're going to drag this platform management dashboard into the favorites area. We're not ever going to use the members management because there is a members area built into the platform management tab. Now, once we're in there, we're going to select ourselves. This will be, or them, the initial admin. And we're going to want to go in here, and we're not going to see 3D Designer or Collaborative Industry Innovator. But if we click View All, we'll be able to check that, and it'll add both the roles, so they'll see all 3 roles after they're selected. Once this is done first, we'll never have to do it again. Now from here, we're going to create a new dashboard. Step 2 in the process is for us to load the material library. We might as well start creating the student dashboard at the same time. So in this case, we're going to label it Student Dashboard. We're then going to do the same thing as before and drag it up in a favorites area. That way they have it easily accessible whenever they need to. Now we're going to click on the compass symbol. In here, we want to do a few things. There's a few different apps we want to take advantage of and use, but also we probably want to build a little favorite apps area for the teacher to use. That way they know the primary apps that are helpful for them in the classroom. To start off, we're going to grab 3D Play. Once the drop your app here turns blue, we can drop it. We're going to grab 3D Space. We're going to grab 3D Swim, Collaborative Lifecycle, Community Control Center, Project Planning, Quick Links, User Groups, Web Page Reader, and finally, XDesign. At the bottom of the list, you might have noticed one called SolidWorks, and I want to be very upfront and tell you that that is the connector. That is not SolidWorks in the cloud, so I just want to specify that while we're here. Now, these are the apps that we're going to use throughout this process, and I'll explain a bunch of them. First thing we need to do is drag XDesign in. When you click and drag them, you can drop them inside a dashboard. And then we're also going to drag in 3D Space. Once these are dragged in, we're going to close the compass apps area. We're going to click the drop down underneath New Tab and click Fit. All these drop down arrows are considered the menu tabs. This will fit them perfectly to the screen, and we can still resize it any way we want. We're going to rename this one. Now this is specific to what the school wants to use, but something like a design tab is a good name, or CAD tab, or whatever you'd like to do. Once this is completed, we're first going to have to actually create a collaboration space. So in the collaborative space area, you'll see that there's a drop down right next to where it says My Collaborative Spaces. We click this drop down and click New Collaborative Space. We then title it, something like Teacher Space, or whatever we'd like to use. Once we have that, we click Create. This will create that space. Now I've already created one for that. You'll see here, Teacher Space. And if we want to add members to it, you can click a drop down directly on it and click Add Member. But in this case, because we are the ones that created it, we're automatically the owner. And that's why later we want to create the collaboration spaces for the students. That way you automatically are the main owner. The teacher is automatically the main owner for it. Once this is created, we can click New Component inside XDesign. And we're going to click the Maximize button on XDesign so that it's full screen. Now we're going to select the teacher space, and we're going to press OK. It's going to create and load this physical product one. Sometimes the first time this takes a moment to load. Once this is done, we need to press Save. We always have to press Save first, because otherwise it doesn't actually create the save inside the collaborative space. We're going to go to Tools, and we're going to click this fourth to last icon called Update Content Library. So this is the material library. This initially will take some time the first time it's done. It'll probably take 5 to 10 minutes to create. You just have to be patient and just let it run. And once it's updated, you'll see a pop-up that says Update Content Library. Once that's updated, we want to verify that it's updated properly, and you'll see here Material Browser. So we click on this, you'll see Core Materials and Covering Materials. If both of those are there and you see a number next to it, then it means it loaded properly. These numbers may change depending on when we update the content library and when the customer updates them. So don't worry if they don't match exactly what I have here. Once this is done, we can minimize or restore the size of the XDesign screen, and you will then see a new collaborative space in here called Library. Now I don't have it because I was not the initial admin that set it up on this tenant, but you'll see one called Library, and that one is only seen by the first admin. So they're the only ones that'll see Common Space and one called Library. The students will only see all the ones that the teacher has given them access to. If we do one for each individual student, they'll only see their own, for example, Kohler_Ryan. Or if they do one for the entire class, you might see one called Fall Semester. It comes down to the choice of what the teacher would like to do. Now, before we move on, we want to finish making this student dashboard. I'm going to add one more tab, and I'm going to rename this e-learning. Once that's done, I want to click a new tab, and I want to type in My SolidWorks. Now, mysolidworks.com. If I type in XDesign and search, and then select what type or training, I'll see this one called Explore the 3D Creator Role. Now, if I click on that and wait for it to load, I can copy this URL. This is a XDesign learning path that goes through all the different features within XDesign and how to actually use the product. It is completely e-learning, so there's no interaction with the actual XDesign product that you need, but you'll have questions and answers at the end of each of one of these videos that the students can go through. Now, if I go back to my tab that has the platform, I can click my compass symbol, and I can drag in Web Page Reader. I'm going to close the compass. I'm going to click the drop-down menu next to e-learning and click Fit, and then I'm going to paste in, or Control-V, that URL that I copied. Once I click Add, you'll see that we have inside the Web Page Reader, we have now the Explore the 3D Creator role, just like we had on the other tab. Now, there is another one I'd like to point out. If we click our dashboard list and we go to this one called Become a 3D Designer, we have a bunch of different tabs to get the customer started, different quick tips, learning, and everything all within this tab that every student will have access to once they get the 3D Designer for Education role. Now on the Learn tab, there's one called 3D Designer for Education. This one has the XDesign and the XShape learning paths in here as well. So I just want to point that out as well. They can copy this URL and use it, but this URL seems to work perfectly fine all the time. Sometimes there are some issues with the other one. Now, once we've completed that, we're going to go back to platform management. Our student dashboard's completed and ready to go. Platform management, and we're going to go to the tab called content. On here, we're going to maximize the one that says Collaborative Space Control Center. Now, the reason why is when we click on the Manage Settings tab, you'll see there's a save icon. Now, if I go back to the same size it was before, you won't see that save icon unless you're really zoomed out in your Chrome window. So if we maximize this first, turn off these two functions here, give access to all new users to Common Space, and enable all new users to create a collaborative space, we can then click Save, which will now stop any new users being added to the Common Space to save parts, and it'll also stop them from the ability to create their own collaboration spaces. Most likely the teacher only wants to be the only one that can do that. Now, if there have been members that have snuck in before, or they invited students before we did this process, no worries. The teacher can go to define member permission. They can click on, let's say this one, my Gmail account, and they can click deny creation. By denying creation, that stops the user from the ability from creating their own collaboration spaces. Once this process has then been completed, you can restore the size of the screen, and then we can do one final or additional step. Now, that's all we really need to do for this process. Those are the three primary steps that we need to complete before the teacher or the school starts to use the tenant. But there's an additional step that I'd like to point out as well. If we click the compass symbol, any of these apps we click on, we can actually open up individually. So in this case, I want to click on the one that says Community Control Center. Now, Community Control Center is where you can create new communities. Let's say you want to create a community for your class 1 fall semester. It's also a place where you can delete the communities. So every single school is going to have a getting started community automatically created when they open the tenant. Now, many times we want to delete this because they already have an LMS system, or they don't want the students the ability to go in and start commenting and chatting on this tenant, but they'd like them to actually communicate on their own LMS system or wherever they have them existing, they're already communicating on. So if we delete this one with this delete button right here, we don't have to worry about the students coming in and doing that. If the teacher later wants to create a community for the students to talk and chat and collaborate, they can click the plus community button and they can add a new community here whenever they want. This just allows them the whole control to not have them adding comments and making different discussions in here without them knowing. So that completes the process for getting the student and going through the three primary steps. Now what I'd like to do is do one more thing where I want to create one more dashboard for the teacher. Now we're going to click the compass or the dashboard list symbol one more time. We're going to click the plus add dashboard, and we're going to create one called teacher dashboard and click create. Once again, we're going to drag this up into the favorites area. We're then going to click the compass, and we're going to drag in 4 apps: XDesign, 3D Space, 3D Play, and Collaborative Lifecycle. We're then going to close the compass menu. And once again, we're going to click the drop down on the new tab and click Fit. Now, XDesign, we already know 3D Space is where the collaborative space is where all the students are. But what I want to show you is these 2 apps below. If a teacher wants to find out the mass properties of a part that a student created, they can quickly drag a part into XDesign and then take a look at the mass properties on the Tools tab. But if they want to quickly look at the part to see what the student's progress is, or the most recent save the student made, they can drop it inside 3D Play. 3D Play is a viewer, just like eDrawings, where they can quickly view a part, rotate it, zoom, and take a look at the part, as well as actually measure different things and create section views as well. This is a great tool to just make sure that students are actually working on the projects that they're supposed to be. Now, if we want to see if a student is cheating, there's another way as well. We can drag any one of the parts into this area in the bottom here called Collaborative Lifecycle. I'm going to drag this part in to Collaborative Lifecycle. It's going to load the part. In this case, we have a part created by Mike Leary. And we're going to see the life cycle of the part, but real specifically, we want to see this drop-down arrow right here. If we click this drop-down arrow and go to Properties, we'll be able to see who initially created this part. We'll see Mike Leary created it and where they actually saved it. In this case, it was fall semester. But if another student took this part and saved it as their own, we'd see another line item above this blue dot, and we'd see another drop down, and we'd be able to see the properties, and we'd be able to see that the student cheated and basically copied Mike's part. So this is a great way to be able to see that schools or students are cheating on stuff without them actually knowing. Once this is created, this is what the teacher will most likely use to navigate and be able to see the files and work with the parts. Now we're going to go back to the student dashboard. And that is the initial setup steps that we need to work through. This is exactly what you need to set up for the school when they before they actually start using it, so that it's nice and seamless and they have things created and easy to use. As you can tell, that did not take a lot of time at all. So once you watch this recording and you work through this process, you will be able to do it just as easy. Additionally, we want to make sure schools understand how to create collaborative spaces as well as add members to them. And also how to add members to the individual dashboard that they created for the students, and how to use tools such as user groups. Now, in the process of adding students to the platform, they're going to use the Platform Management tab, and they're going to go to the Members area, and they can either add students by clicking Invite Member, typing in the email address, or copying and pasting the email address. And if they had multiple students, let's say up to 10 in here, they can put semicolons between each one. They're always going to leave user rights as member, default, and English here. When they click Next, they'll be able to then select the 3 roles that they have access to, and then finally, they are able to invite them. If the school has many students they want to add, they can use this Import Members area. By doing this, they're able to click Import Members, and they can see an example here. They can download this example CSV file, and they want to use this one right here. On row 3, you'll see email address, semicolon member, semicolon employee. This is what they want the format of all the students' emails to be in, and then they can save it as a CSV file. They then can upload that CSV file here, click Next, and then they're able to select the roles like before, and then they're able to click Invite. Once the students are invited, before the teacher can add them to their individual collaboration spaces or the group collaboration space, they need to log in for the first time. However, we can use user groups, and we can create user groups for the school using the email addresses that have been invited. We don't have to have them log in for the first time in order to create a user group. So to save the teacher some time, they can do add new group. We can call this Fall Class 1, create, double click plus member, and we can start typing in email addresses. For example, I can type in mike.leary@3ds.com. And of course, I need to spell his name properly. And you see here, it'll pop up with Mike Leary. Now, if the student has not logged in for the first time yet, it won't pop up with their name, but they can add as many of those students in here by copying and pasting off of, let's say, an Excel document with the students' email addresses and add them in here. Once they're added to Fall Class 1, we then can add them to this dashboard, this student dashboard. Now there's two different ways to do this. You can click the dashboard list symbol and click the gear symbol while you're in student dashboard. This goes to the menu area where you can click add members. You see here we have student dashboard highlighted, student dashboard, add member. We want to add as a reader, and we can, type in Mike's name, and it'll pop up down below with the individual person's name, or we can add that user group we just created. Start typing it in, Fall Class, and you'll see here we have Fall Class 1. Now currently it has 0 members in it, but we can actually add that now as a reader, and then later as we add more members to that user group, they'll automatically get added to this dashboard. Now the reason why we want to add them to the dashboard first is so that they can actually go to the e-learning tab and start going through some of the videos while the teacher is creating collaboration spaces for the student. The other method to get to this menu, as we saw here, dashboard list, manage, you can also click the drop down up top where it says 3D dashboard, and currently we're on the student dashboard, and you can click on manage. This brings you to the same exact place. So once the students have been invited and they're working through the e-learning problems, the teacher can now spend some time to create collaboration spaces for the student. So if we maximize 3D space here, there's many different methods to how this can be done. Some schools like individual collaboration spaces for each student, and that prohibits students from cheating. If they only are able to save in their own collaboration space, they're not able to copy anybody else's file and use it. The only way that's possible is if they export the file and then someone else imports it, but once again, there will be the ability for the teacher to see that it was originally saved by someone else and they resaved it or imported it. The other option is to create an entire collaboration space for the class. Many schools are doing this with a large amount of students. Now, this doesn't stop students from cheating, obviously, but it is a great way to manage, an easy way to manage everybody at once. And the benefit of it doing it that way is if we click on, let's say we have Fall Semester 1, and we click on it. Oops, sorry. We will do, Fall Period 2, and click on it. We can click the drop down and click Add Member. And once again, like we did before, I can actually add that user group, Fall Class. If I start typing it in, I can actually add the user group of Fall Class 1 directly to this collaborative space. Now, if you do individual ones for the student, you can type in their name. Many schools are doing last name and then first name second. This way they can organize up top here, sort alphabetical order, and they'll put them in order by the student's last name. Now, once they create them, click the drop down, My Collaborative Spaces, drop down, New Collaboration Space, for example, Kohler_Ryan, create. They can then click the drop down underneath each one, click Add Member, and then add the person's name as an author. Remember, they're not able to add students to collaboration spaces until they've accepted the invite and they've actually logged in for the first time. Once these are all created for the students, whether it's a class or whether it's individual for the student, and also one other option that I've heard, which might be good to explain to teachers, is to create a new collaboration space each week of class. That way they can add everybody to that collaboration space for week 1. And then once the students are done with week 1, they remove that user group from the collaborative space. And to do that, if you were to click on the collaboration space you want to work with, the I symbol in the top right, and then go to Access, you can actually click the drop down and you can remove that user group from or member from the collaboration space. By doing this, it doesn't allow students to they're not able to work on the parts anymore. And then the teacher then creates a collaboration space week 2 that they then invite that user group to, and then they start working on that one. This gives the teacher time to then grade the parts that they completed. And also it doesn't allow students to sneak in parts that they didn't finish during the time frame they were supposed to. So there's many options here, and there's a lot of versatility to how this can be used. Once this is completed and we've added members to the dashboard, as well as added students to their individual collaboration spaces, they should be good to go. Now, XDesign is very similar to SOLIDWORKS in many ways. They might have some questions on how to save and open and do different parts. The one big thing that we will point out is that, remember, the cloud never turns off. So unlike SOLIDWORKS, when you have on a computer where you're using SOLIDWORKS or using another CAD software and you close a part, then another student can work on it. If you don't close the part in here, it never closes until you actually click the close button. So if I maximize this, we take a look at, we're on Physical Product 1 inside XDesign. If I click save, just to save it one more time, you'll see right next to the save icon, there's a close icon. We want to make sure schools and students understand that they have to close the part in order for someone else to use it. Now, the teacher, as the owner on each collaboration space, can still open the files, but the teacher also has to remember to close the files so that way students can continue to work on them. So make sure you explain there is a save button, as well as you need to close the file once you're done with it. Otherwise, it'll just stay open. If you refresh the page while a part is still open, you'll have a restore button like you saw a moment ago where you can bring the part back up. So that's what I'd like to go over for the initial setup of the tenant, as well as initial steps to get teachers up and running. Hopefully this has been easy to understand and something you can learn and walk through on your own. Please try this process on your own demo tenant at your reseller so that you can practice this process, so that you can do this for customers in the future to save them some time. Thank you. Once again, this is Ryan Kohler, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.